You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob.
Back for another episode of Inside the Village with Michael Friscolanti, Editor-in-Chief at Village Media. Derek Turner, Executive Producer in the room, and I'm Scott Sexsmith. Great to see everybody. How's it going?
Excellent. I really, I was still thinking this week about last week's episode with the guitar player. I just, you know how many people came up to me and said, I really liked that one. That was hilarious.
It's crazy.
It's great. We cover all these really serious issues, and that was not as serious, obviously, but people love that.
Yeah. Hope he's recovering well. We should say a big thank you to you because, and I'm going to tell the audience, you're actually officially on holidays, but the show is so important to you.
It's my life.
The show must go on.
Yeah, the show must go on, yeah.
So you dropped what you were doing.
Yeah, and most people around here would say, "What you're on? I look like I'm on holidays all the time. What am I really doing?"
I mean,
around
Derek
here?
and I would never say that.
Yeah. Well, I heard you say it.
You're right. Some people would.
Some people would say that.
Not us, though.
But yes, I took some holidays. I've been here. It's been a great ride, 18 months so far, and this is kind of like my first week of holidays, so I'm excited.
That's crazy,
Yeah,
man.
but then you tell me I have to come in and film this podcast. So
You know you lose them if you don't use them.
Yeah,
right?
my family was really upset that I left for an hour.
Right. Yeah, you bet. Applause all around.
Yeah, no, they didn't even notice. I could have left.
All right. Well, we're glad that you did it.
Thank you.
And appreciate the commitment.
It's worth it. We have an interesting guest, fascinating coming on.
This is going to be fantastic. The 37th Speaker of the House of Commons, Anthony Rota, MP from Nipissing-Timiskaming.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 5-time MP, and I had the pleasure of knowing him years and years ago when I worked radio in North Bay. Wonderful gentleman, and can't wait to have a meaningful discussion with him.
For sure. So that's worth coming in. Maybe if it was last week's guest, I might have kept on staying on holidays. You could probably handle that one yourself. But
you could have zoomed in.
Zoomed in, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, zoomed in
behind a drum set.
All right, let's segue to the first word to Frisco. As always, some great stories across the Village Media Network this week and each and every week, frankly. Let's start in Sault Ste. Marie, the Group Health Center dropping an alarming number of patients, and a great story by Darren Taylor.
You have to give Darren credit on this story. Obviously, doctor shortage is an issue going on across the province, especially in Northern Ontario. We've talked about it on this show. We had Tim Vine on a couple months ago talking about the fact they keep having to close the hospitals in Thessalon. The Group Health Center here in the Soo, the largest healthcare provider in the city, a lot of patients have just suddenly being de-rostered is the term they're using. So they've been members and patients at the Group Health Center for decades, and this was a facility that Algoma Steel was involved in putting together years and years ago. And a lot of people who've been there from the beginning, or their families were there from the beginning, are now just being dropped, right? And Darren did some digging on it, asked for some stats, and the Group Health Center confirmed that they de-rostered 2,800 patients over the last 6 years, right? That's a lot. But even more so, and to Group Health's credit, they're saying it's going to get worse because we have doctors retiring, we're not graduating enough doctors. So the same thing that everyone else is worried about is happening here. But I have to say a lot of reaction from this story. A lot of people saying that's happening to me or that happened to my cousin, and a lot of shock about how that can happen.
And how are they deciding who gets de-rostered? Is it arbitrary? They just...
From what we understand is that if your doctor retires, for example, they've tried to say, okay, we're going to hook you up with another doctor or a nurse practitioner, and then sometimes those nurse practitioners leave. And if they can't find you alternative health care, then you get de-rostered. That's the way it goes. And you know what it's like. If you try to ask any doctor right now, can you take my wife on as a patient? They're just not going to do it.
No,
they're swamped, right? And I understand their perspective too, right?
Yeah.
But here's Group Health Center, like such a critically important organization in the Soo, and I think they're now up to 57. I could be wrong. I have to read the story. 57,000 patients, but they were up to over 60,000 at one point, and they're admitting it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to have, and a lot of these people are elderly patients that they're at the stage in their life where they need health care the most. Just one of those things where we always talk about just shining the light, saying, hey, here's what's going on at Group Health. Group Health didn't hide that fact. They were honest and said, this is what we've de-rostered, and this is how much it's going to get worse. So I give them credit for being honest about it, but an interesting local story for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move to a wonderful story from Bay Today. Reporter Chris Dawson. Are you familiar with the two roofers that saved?
I love this story too, and I know you've talked to me about it. How much this story. This is a great example of local journalism. Just and again, there's accidents all the time, unfortunately, and here's Chris telling a much bigger story.
It was great, and we recently filmed a behind-the-scenes segment on it. So as the story goes, two roofers in the Mattawa area traveling on Highway 17 en route to, Derek, was it Dryden? Yes. Dryden, en route to Dryden. A dump truck ahead of them all of a sudden blows a tire, heads for a rock cut, turns over, driver is trapped. The two roofers in the vehicle decide that they need to spring into action and help this fella out. So they run to his aid. As it turns out, one of the roofers is a volunteer firefighter. So he's been trained, never in a lead role in this kind of a setting, but instinct kicks in. He and the 19-year-old traveling with him got the guy out, pulled him out of the vehicle. There was gasoline. It had the makings of what could have been a catastrophic event. But the irony of the whole story is the gentleman that they saved is also a volunteer firefighter at another detachment and has been for over 25 years.
That's crazy. So the volunteer firefighter on the street runs to save another guy who turns out to be a volunteer firefighter.
It's crazy.
It's fantastic journalism. I love stories like that. I mean, because you always hear, you hear the tweet or the radio report saying, "Oh, there's an accident on this highway. Roads are shut down."
Yeah.
But look at that story within the story, right?
Yeah.
And Chris is fantastic at those kind of stories, right? He can always get the details out. So that's really it was a great story.
Yeah, it was. And Chris is a wonderful storyteller. So look for that behind the scenes to air shortly. All right, an extremely scary criminal case unfolded near Barrie recently.
Yeah, I think a lot of our readers in Simcoe County, obviously, a lot of people, I think this made national news too, but there was an autism center there, and all of a sudden the OPP decided to warn the community, hey, there's a convicted sex offender who's living in this place where this camp is going on. And it was kind of strange. Not strange, the OPP has the power to do that. They have the discretion, the commissioner of the OPP, to say we need to warn the public, even though there's not an active criminal case. This guy apparently had been charged with multiple counts of child trafficking, sex offenses involving children. So this is pretty serious, and he's near this camp. So they put out this warning. Nikki Cole, one of our great reporters in Barrie, covers this story. The protest, there was a protest out of the fact. Well, it turns out the OPP didn't just warn them. They were actively investigating these guys and were imminently going to arrest them, him and his wife. The next day, they get arrested for sex trafficking crimes, right? Human trafficking charges, right? Again, allegations haven't been tested in court yet, but they've been charged. And so they both arrested. This is Lauriston Maloney, 42, and Amber Maloney, 36. So again, Barrie Today does a great job covering that. Then our team at the Trillium jumps on the story too. Jessica Smith, cross editor-in-chief there, because of course autism services in Ontario have been terrible for years.
Right.
And people have been complaining about the Ford government's lack of emphasis or effort on this. And so Jessica spoke to some advocates, basically blaming the Ford government because there's such little access to proper care for children with autism that the people are being exposed to people like this, right?
Yeah.
So then you have the political side of this story, right? So just super proud of, a terrible story, but super proud of the way our Village team covered it, from our team at Barrie Today to our team at the Trillium covering all the angles. We had them all covered. Fantastic stuff.
All right, great coverage. Okay, today on the show, 5-time MP from Nipissing-Timiskaming. More importantly, the Speaker of the House of Commons, the 37th Speaker of the House of Commons, Anthony Rota, will be on the show.
I'm really excited about that. It'd be fun to talk to him. I'm interested to know some of the inner workings of Parliament that we were just chatting about before that I'm really not sure the answer to. So I'm anxious to talk about that.
Yep, it's going to be a good conversation. Anthony Rota, Speaker of the House, joins us next when Inside the Village returns right after this.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Welcome back to Inside the Village. I'm Scott Sexsmith alongside Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media. Extremely excited to have on the line with us the 37th Speaker of the House of Commons and 5-time sitting MP for Nipissing-Timiskaming, Mr. Anthony Rota. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Rota, great to have you on Inside the Village. Thanks for doing this.
It's great to be here, Scott. And hello, Mike. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I think we'll start with your health. I know a few months ago you had some surgery. Most importantly, how you doing? How you feeling? How's recovery?
Feeling great. It's been about a year and a half now, and it was some open heart surgery. They had to do a bypass. It's these low stress jobs, I guess. They tend to build up on it, but no, overall, everything has come along just well. It's took a little time to get over it, but no, everything is going very smoothly now, and I feel great.
That's fantastic. Kind of leads into my next question, I guess, as we speak, and by the time this gets to air, probably the widely anticipated cabinet shuffle will be finished that everyone's been reporting on today and likely all day tomorrow. Numerous senior ministers saying they're not going to run. Are you going to run in the next election, Mr. Rota?
I'll let you know as soon as I decide, ultimately.
It's still up in the air?
It's until you actually make that decision. Usually, you just kind of keep it as an option. Let's say. So, how about the old the reporter's favorite thing is, like, hearing the words "no comment."
We've almost never heard that before.
Yeah, no one's ever told me
exactly.
that.
You've been Speaker of the House since December 2019. Can you kind of explain to our audience who maybe aren't clear or maybe don't understand your role and how it impacts your duties also as a sitting MP?
Sure. I mean, that's something that I get asked often is, how do you juggle the two of them? Let's take the Speaker's role first. I mean, as you mentioned, I was first elected in 2019 in December, and it was a real honor because, you're chosen by vote. It's a preferential ballot, and you're chosen by the members of the House, and it's the first thing you do when you get back after an election is choose a Speaker. And I was honored to be selected not only once, but again after the following election. So here I am as Speaker, and the nice thing about being Speaker is you're very neutral in the whole situation. So in the House, you have to be able to show that you are neutral and that you are able to make your decisions on a fair basis. It's basically like a referee. So the first role, there's three main roles. The first one that people see more than anything else is in the House, in the chamber. And you, as Speaker, have to make sure that the rules of the House are followed. And there is some latitude there because, over the years, the rules have been bent a bit and they have been changed a bit. So you've got what people believe that they should be doing. And sometimes, you can bend the rules a certain amount, but you can't break them. So it's making sure that everything is done and there's decorum followed. One of the other things being in the House is to make sure that the debate goes on well, and make sure that there's respect for each other, which is not always easy because it's a very passionate thing and people are often debating things that are very important to them, and sometimes it does get out of hand and you have to take a some stern actions to make sure that it calms down or that things work. Now, the interesting thing is that the Speaker cannot vote in the House, only if there's a tie. And it's only happened to me once, and it was when I was first elected, and it was a procedural thing, thank goodness, that came up. But usually there's a rule of thumb that it's not about voting for or against something, it's about voting to keep the discussion going. So if there's going to be some kind of final change that's going to be dramatic or non-dramatic for that matter, you can't come in and say, okay, we're going to make it and it's final right now. The vote is always to keep the discussion going, and hopefully we'll have some kind of an agreement coming after that. And that's what the goal of the Speaker voting is. Mm-hmm. So that's what happens in the chamber, making sure the rules are done. One of the other things that people don't see is chair of the Board of Internal Economy. The Board of Internal Economy is basically what runs what goes on on the Hill. So there's about 6,000 employees, a budget of about $520 million, and you chair the board that that runs that. Any changes to policy, any changes to things being done, the renovations that are going on with the center block, that's all run through the Board of Internal Economy and the Speaker's office. So there's a little bit of a responsibility there that goes on. Now, the third role of the Speaker, and I'm sorry, it is quite a lengthy question.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
I'm not giving you a 30-second soundbite here.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. We try to go. We don't want 30-second sound bites. We like the detailed conversation.
We're in the perfect. We're in the perfect venue. Then, the third role of the Speaker is one of diplomatic issues or diplomatic means, where on a regular basis, I'd say about 3 meetings a week, we have an ambassador. Because in Ottawa, we have almost 200 ambassadors who are there from different countries. And I have meetings with them on a regular basis to make sure that our countries do have a good relationship going on. If there's any visiting dignitaries, whether it's a prime minister, a president, speakers from other countries, and that kind of thing, anybody coming through, one of the people they want to meet is, of course, the prime minister, but the other one is the Speaker of the House. So we have discussions on how we can keep things going on a regular basis. And I travel abroad as well to make sure that those relationships continue to grow on a government-to-government basis. And what happens is when you have a government-to-government basis relationship, it's very important. But when people-to-people start forming relationships, it just makes it that much stronger. So there's often situations where I'll travel abroad or have other members of other countries travel to Canada as well. And we'll often have either an event or a dinner with them or just plain meetings to make sure that we're all in the same boat, or where we have our differences, that we understand why we have differences. Now, you also asked how does that affect being a member of Parliament for Nipissing-Timiskaming, which to me is my prime role. And what ends up happening is whenever I come home, and usually I come home every weekend, there are events going on in the riding. And the riding is about 13,000 with 19 communities. So I'm up and down Highway 11 and up and down 17, meeting with different communities at different events and getting the feedback from what's going on. Now, one of the questions that comes up often is, well, you're not allowed to speak in the House for your riding. Yep, that's a certain amount of truth, but I've never really been one to get up in the House and advocate. Mine is more subtle in the background and speaking to people and making sure they understand what's going on. And that's probably why they chose me as Speaker, is because whenever there was something to discuss or to check out, I would be sent as part, just almost like an emissary, saying, okay, let's see what we can work out, because it's more of a diplomatic thing. But one of the things that comes up often is, well, if the minister needs to know what's going on, how do you let them know? Well, what often happens is during question period, I'll usually slip them a note and say, well, do you have a few minutes after question period? And that's usually you try to get to the minister and you try to get some time. Nobody really wants to upset the Speaker. So, yeah, they're very friendly towards the Speaker.
So there's actually a benefit for sure.
It's like getting called to the principal's office.
Yeah, that's
well, yes, exactly. And for a good thing. Normally what will happen is I'll see if they would like to meet in my office. Right, it's right behind the chamber, so it's not a big detour, and we'll sit down and I'll explain to them what's going on in the riding and why a certain legislation may not work, or what the benefits are, so that you can encourage it to go ahead. And that works out fairly well. The other thing for the riding is there's a certain amount of stature that comes with the Speaker's position. I'm honored to be able to fulfill it. But everybody knows about Nipissing-Timiskaming and knows where this is, what I like to think is the best riding in Canada. But any MP who doesn't think that probably doesn't deserve that job.
It's fascinating. I appreciate the explanation but you also sit in caucus too, right? You still go to caucus meetings with the.
No, I'm not allowed to sit in
see that I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not okay, but it's
Interesting.
and I appreciate the explanation because that's why I wondered if I'm a constituent and you're riding, how do I get my concerns voiced to the people that matter? I see now how you're able to do it. Is it also? But you're still a member of the Liberals in the House, right? Is that accurate? Is that?
I'm neutral. I'm not allowed to be in the
all
caucus
right.
and take part in partisan activities.
Okay.
Normally, what I'll do is I'll have activities in the speaker's lounge, and I'll make sure that both sides are there, both government and opposition members. And one of my jobs is trying to keep them at least talking to each other. What I've started doing when I first got elected was having dinners on Wednesday nights whenever I can, and invite between 12 and 20 MPs. And there's one rule only in that meeting. You're not allowed to sit next to someone from the same party.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And by eating together and getting to know each other, I find it makes a difference in the House. And it's no longer that no good for nothing so-and-so on the other side. Oh, it's John or Mary. I think I'll go talk to him or her. And it kind of opens the doors. And I think that's an important part of being a speaker right there.
We should all behave that way, sit around. A lot of more things would get accomplished that way. Because I've always wondered as I watch you or other speakers of the House, you did have a relationship even before you were elected speaker. You were a member of that caucus, and these are your friends and colleagues. And I wonder, is it hard to say, well, I want to rule for that person because, they're someone I've known for 20 years as a colleague and not the guy on the opposition bench, but you have to be neutral. Is that a tough call to make? It'd be like being a referee in hockey and saying, well, this is my kid's team playing, but I'm going to rule against the other guy.
Well, I'll be honest with you, it's not an easy thing on either side because, whether you're going for the government side or the opposition side, the person has put a lot into it and their heart and soul has been put into this question, and you have to do what you think is right. And that's something that it doesn't come easy, and it's nothing that's done very quickly. So we usually take a few days, even up to a week, to come up with a decision on a ruling, and I rely on the rules themselves and some good judgment. And I've come down many times against both sides and in favor of both sides, which I feel I try to upset both sides as much as I can.
That's good to know. It's good. And I don't mean to keep...
equally.
That's great. I appreciate that. It's been hugely informative. All grade 8 students should watch this podcast just to understand how the House of Commons works,
Absolutely.
Right? But this will be the last question on that front then. So you're not allowed to go back... You don't go back to your writing on the weekend and say pump up or for new federal funding for the hospital. You don't do that like a typical MP would, right? Or do you still go to those announcements, say, the Liberal government's funding this project? Are you able to do that kind of stuff?
I'm still going to some of the announcements when we do have announcements, because it is the riding that I represent.
Yes.
I just can't come out and say, well, the government is wonderful and they're doing this, or the opposition is terrible and they're doing that.
I see. Okay.
I'm usually, and in all honesty, if you look at any of my announcements, even before I was speaker, I'm just happy to get that funding into the riding, and I'm going to continue to keep it coming in. I'm not going to use the opportunity to bash one side or to prop up the other. This is about working together, and that's something that I've always believed in. And not only at a government in opposition, but different levels of government. I'm known for bringing all sides together and seeing about getting some results, and to me, that's something that I continue to do.
Well, it's a great segue to my next question then about just the decorum in the House of Commons, right? A lot of people watch Question Period, and I'm sure you get notes from people saying, why is everyone yelling at each other like that? Why are they behaving like that? And I think you were quoted in May as saying that the insanity of this place has been escalating. I think you were quoted as that. So what is it like in there? And do you find that people are less respectful, or the decorum has gone down more so over the last couple of years? What do you think?
I've been here since 2004, and I've seen some really rough times and some really good times. I would say that we've got days where it's much better, and other days where people, I don't know what it is in the water, the air they're breathing, and they're all excited, and sometimes it's passion. So for me to say that, yeah, it's worse, I'm not sure that it's worse. What I do find, though, is sometimes when it does reach those peaks, it's become more personal than it has in the past. Although if you go back to some of the times in the late 80s and early 90s, it got pretty rough as well over there. So, I mean, it goes in waves up and down. And some days, I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting in the Parliament, in the House of Commons, and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, okay, something is going to blow sooner or later because this is a little too quiet. You know, when your kids are quiet and you're not sure, okay, what are they up to? And other times where they come in and you could tell right from the beginning that, okay, today is not going to be a fun day. It's going to be rough. So you do your best at tempering it. And I think we've managed to get a certain control over it. It's kind of interesting because one of the things that people don't realize is when they're speaking, there's a little light that's on their desk, on an MP's desk. And as long as that light is on, their microphone is on. But as soon as the speaker stands, all the lights go off and it's just the speaker's microphone that's on. So what I've done, and I learned this trick from my wife who was a teacher, she said, if you're a teacher and you shout as loud as the students, all that happens is the noise level goes through the roof. So I've had it happen where I just kind of stand up and I start looking at them and I'm going, okay, where do we go from here? And they start realizing, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we pushed it too far, and everything just calms down, and then we continue. So it seems to have worked out fairly well.
Always listen to the teachers, Mr. Rota. They know what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about. Well, you know, speaking of keeping with this subject, I did watch this year. You did threaten at one point to eject Pierre Poilievre, I think at least once during a particular debate. And you talk right now about the personal relationships and what goes on behind the scenes. What's your relationship like with him? What's he like to you?
I mean, he's another MP, and like I said, I try to keep the doors open as much as possible. My door to my office is always open. And one of the things I do on a regular basis, usually on a weekly basis, is I'll take about 45 minutes and walk through the two lobbies just to say, hello, I'm here. Anything coming up, and just so that they know I'm not sitting on an ivory tower looking down on anyone. I'm just an MP who happens to be the speaker, and I'll take a walk through the opposition lobbies and through the government lobby and get to hear what they have to say. So with MPs individually, if there's an MP who wants to come in to see me, my door is always open. And I get visitors from on both sides. If there's something that's either bothering them or if they have a suggestion, we're open for I'm open to hear what they have to say.
The opposition clung to the term just inflation every time they talked about the economy, but you've banned that term from the House. Mr. Speaker, can you explain why you did that?
Well, what happened with just inflation, I mean, it was a catchy phrase and whatnot, but you can't name a person. And, first few times I just thought, okay, it'll pass over. But then it became a little too obvious, where when somebody says just inflation, I mean, it was a little too obvious that they were naming someone, and we thought, okay, that's enough of that, and we'll cut it down. And there's been some games like that played on both sides, both the government side and the opposition side. So it's really using your judgment to try to keep it reasonable.
Frisco asked what your relationship was with, or is with Pierre Poilievre, so I'll ask, what is it like with the Prime Minister?
Same thing. I mean, it's another MP, and he just happens to be the Prime Minister. And it works out fairly well. If there's anything that has to be said. They'll sometimes stop by the speaker's chair and say, okay, I've got this on my mind or something else. And the conversation continues, and it's always there.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we had your longtime friend Vic Fideli on the show a few weeks ago, and Vic was kind enough to give us the inside scoop on his nickname for his boss, or Premier Ford, which was the 800-pound gorilla. Does Prime Minister Trudeau have a nickname?
Well, I often get this, and I've been getting this since 2004 when people say your boss, and I look to them and say, look, my boss is the riding of Nipissing-Timiskaming, the people, and that's what it should be. I mean, it's the leader of the party is a whole other story, who happens to be the premier or the prime minister, but the boss, that's the people who elected me, and that's who I try to listen to. But no, I don't have any nicknames for the leaders, whether it's the opposition or the government.
Well, let's chat then a bit in your role as MP. Okay, we want to talk to you a little bit about Bill C-18, the Online News Act. Right. Obviously, you're well versed in it. You've listened to the debates that are going on there, and as an MP, you're well aware that certain media organizations like ours, Digital First, are very concerned about Bill C-18 because we have always believed that we work closely with companies like Google and Facebook to help our company to bring readers to our websites, and that Bill C-18 is not in our interest as a media company. It may be in the interests of some of the legacy media companies that have been struggling since the dawn of the internet, but it's definitely not in ours, and it could do some damage to our ability to cover our communities, including in your home city in North Bay, where Bay Today has been a huge success there for a long time. What are your thoughts on Bill C-18? Did you have any of these kind of discussions with ministers at the time?
It was C-18 is an interesting one because, the intent is to make sure that radio or newscasters and reporters actually get paid for what they're putting out. And if somebody's going to use your information, I can see where what they're trying to do is make sure that there's some proper compensation going back to the creators of the material. Now, the downside is that if they don't use your material, then you're not even getting free access out there. So it really is not an easy one to put together. I know they used the Australian model as a role model for what they put together here for C-18, which seems to have worked out fairly well in Australia. And that's something that I find that, okay, that might not be a bad idea. But overall, I think time is going to tell us whether C-18 is actually successful or not. And depending on the media outlet, I think there'll be some mixed reviews on it. As you mentioned, something like yours might find it to the disadvantage, but others who are struggling might find it, okay, we're putting together something, or they're putting together something that will actually get paid for if it's used. Mm-hmm. And I put the emphasis on if it's used, because it'll probably influence what goes on either the social media or some of the other media that use it. But in all fairness, if you're using something that belongs to somebody else, or if you're putting it forward, I guess they're getting some free publicity or publicity in a certain way. But on the other hand, is it something that you have the right to do as you want with?
Well, this is where the devil's in the details, right? Because we would argue that they're not using our stuff. We're putting it on their platform. We're voluntarily putting it there because we want the attention it brings. It drives traffic to our sites. And a lot of people in our communities, including North Bay, actually get their local news from their Facebook feed. They'll see our stories go through their feed, and this is not in our interest. So it will be. I do agree. There's a lot of posturing going on right now with Facebook, with Google, with the government, and time will tell on sort of where it comes out in the end. But it is deeply concerning to us on that front in terms of how this could impact our ability, because you can imagine in a community like North Bay what Bay Today means to that community, the kind of coverage that we bring there, and if that's challenged anyway, that's extremely concerning for us.
No, any kind of regulations is a concern to all sides, and it's what the outcome is, as you mentioned, how it'll work out with the details to it in the long run. I think the intent was good. Now we'll see how it all plays out in the long run.
Do you get to have did you have any conversations with Minister Rodriguez on this? Is this something you're able to talk about behind closed doors, even though you're not supposed to do it outright?
No, certainly. I mean, if there's something that is gurgling in the background or just kind of being in the background, I can mention, look, this is what I'm hearing in my writing. How do you see this working out, or how can it be bettered? And I kind of found that he was open to a few suggestions, and he was very open to it. I do have a little bit of an issue where you have the government on one side and the social media giants on the other, and there's that tension between the two. Let alone C18, just the fact that there's some influence trying to be put in on government and on business. I mean, there's a two-way street, so you have to be very careful, I think, on both sides, so that you're not overstepping what you do, whether it's government or large social media outlets.
And the concern too is that some people would argue that maybe the Liberal government underestimated what Facebook was saying. They were clearly saying, if this bill is passed, we're going to pull out of news in Canada, and they've already started. We're seeing much fewer examples of our work being shared on their site. So they're doing exactly what they said they would, and the government really basically had no answer when people said, well, what's your plan B if they actually do block news? And I guess as an MP, does that scare you to think that Canadian news will be blocked from the two biggest internet platforms that are out there?
I think people look for media that gives them news. I mean, they'll find alternatives if there is something out there. I mean, I really can't speak for Facebook or the government on this one, because there is a little bit of a face-off there. And I'm not going to say one is right or one is wrong, but it certainly is a concern when you see two large entities facing off against each other.
Let's move on to security on the Hill, and even for MPs. I know that's been front and center as of late. What's your opinion on that, Mr. Speaker?
That's something that's very much a concern. As Speaker, the safety of MPs falls under my purview. Anything in the precinct, and we've been monitoring that very closely. I know I've had many discussions with other speakers from around the world, especially with the UK. Lindsay Hoyle, who is the speaker there, and his security team. We've both met in person and through Zoom to see what the other is doing, and they are ahead of us, and not for a good reason, because they've had 2 murders on their hands of MPs and attacks, which is something that we've been fairly fortunate. There's been some threats and whatnot, but it is something that we take very seriously. I know with our security on the Hill and working with the RCMP on this one, as well as local police, whenever something does happen, we want to make sure that we're countering it and making sure that we can help with that. Just
out of curiosity, as Speaker, do you have your own security detail?
I don't. I have a driver who brings me back and forth, but no. During the convoy, yes, I did. I had 2 RCMP officers who escorted me home, back, or wherever I had to go, and it was certainly an interesting time. But other than that, no, I don't have security detail.
Okay, I think we'll leave you with a softball as the last question here, Mr. Rota. And they're all going to make fun of me for asking this question, but I did read that a Conservative MP has filed an official grievance on behalf of all Swifties in the country after Taylor Swift decided not to play. And the report said that he wrote a letter to you filing this official complaint. Did you get this letter, and what are you actually what can you actually do with this?
I did get that letter. And I do appreciate the sense of humor that all MPs have. How's that for an answer?
Are you a Swiftie?
To be honest with you, no. I wouldn't know one of her songs if you played it right now. But the ones I have heard sound very nice. I think, but I wouldn't be able to name one.
We'll have to use it as our exit music today.
Absolutely, that'll be our walk-off music. Mr. Speaker,
I'll probably get 1,000 emails saying, "What? You don't like Taylor Swift?"
Exactly.
I didn't say I didn't like her. I just said I'm not one of her big fans.
This has been a fantastic discussion. Some might call you the principal of the government. Some might call you the chief financial officer. But certainly as Speaker of the House, you have the best seat in the House. And we thank you for doing this today.
I can't disagree with you there. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here with you.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read, it's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Back to wrap on Inside the Village. Derek Turner, Michael Friscolanti, and yours truly, Scott Sexsmith. What an engaging man. What a great conversation.
I really enjoyed that. And, this is fair to say, I think there are some people that will have zero interest in politics, and will not care at all how the House of Commons run. But it is the bedrock of our democracy. It's the foundation. It's how we do things, right?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that conversation. I never spent any time as a parliamentary reporter, but obviously we cover politics a lot, even if you're not on Parliament Hill. And just hearing how things work, and what struck me, what I liked about him is that, we should be talking more, and that's what the problem is, right? You have a dinner with 20 people. Bottle of wine, some steaks, and chat it out. There's really not that much difference between what this guy wants and what the other guy wants. We're all pretty much the same in this country, so I don't know why we can't figure things out.
Can you imagine to be a fly on the wall in the Speaker's dining room with 15 or 20 MPs from both sides of the floor?
Exactly. And it's funny because I went into that interview thinking, if I'm a constituent in North Bay, I'm not feeling very well served, right?
Right.
Because, this guy is not, he's the Speaker of the House, and sure enough, he's right. He probably has a little more influence because he can call a minister into his office and they'll come right there behind the chamber and they can have a conversation about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's ideal.
All right. Good stuff. We'll be back again next week. But before we go, itv@villagemedia.ca is our email address. It's open 24/7. Shoot us a note. We'd love to hear from you. We get lots of feedback. Still getting feedback on the expiry dates.
Yes, well, lots of people. Don't say that again. We're going to get even more. I know.
Going to get you all fired up.
A lot of people are upset, that someone would suggest getting rid of best before dates. It's funny what people cling to. And
I got to be honest, I think of you now every time I'm in the grocery store because I'm paying more attention to, I never, and look, Kim will admit this because I bought stuff that, I probably shouldn't have because it was too close to the date. Mm-hmm. Now I actually look.
I know. Well, I think about you all the time, not just at the grocery store.
That's a fair point.
But yes, I hear what you're saying. No, milk too, right? I'm always looking at the milk because sometimes members of my family will bring home milk that's expiring in 3 days. Like, did you not look at the tag? We're going to drink all this milk in 3 days. But
what a travesty!
I don't but it's funny.
Can't believe they do that to you.
Funny what people talk about. We should have asked the Speaker about best before dates. Do you have mayonnaise in your fridge?
That should be a standard ITV question. If we open your fridge, what are we going to find?
Yeah,
that's expired.
What's expired in your fridge? Or just best before dates? Yes or no? That's what we do.
All right.
Well,
itv@villagemedia.ca.
Best before at itv.ca.
Can't keep up with the one email address we have. We don't need a second one.
I know.
Drop us a note, itv@villagemedia.ca. Find all back episodes across the Village Media Network, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and, of course, at insidethevillage.ca. For executive producer Derek Turner, Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. We'll do it again next week.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.
Frisco and Scott's wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.